Haven't heard, hello, my name is Lisa Fager. I'm the executive director of the Black Georgetown Foundation. I'm honored to share with you the story of the Mount Zion and the Female Union Band Society cemeteries, the two oldest remaining intact Black cemeteries in Washington, D.C. Although physically adjacent, these cemeteries were shaped by different forces within Georgetown's Black community. Together, they represent the intertwined yet distinct paths of religious independence and mutual aid that defined the 19th century Black resilience. We'll unpack these histories more deeply as we move forward. They stand not only as sacred burial grounds, but as powerful monuments to African American resilience, self-determination, and resistance in Georgetown. This site, Tudor Place, or Tudor Place adjacent, bears its own ties to that history. Enslaved Black Washingtonians lived and labored here, including the members of families we'll talk about today. It's a powerful place to reflect on what it means to remember, not only by telling the truth about the past, but by confronting how we preserve, teach, and interpret that history today. Let's begin. Let's see. Today, I'll guide you through the powerful stories embedded in the Mount Zion and the Female Union Band Society cemeteries. These grounds speak to remembrance, resistance, and resilience, the themes that will shape our time together. We'll uncover how these cemeteries came to be, introduce you to some of the extraordinary people buried here, reflect on the cultural traditions of care and mourning, revisit key legal fights to protect the land, and share how today's preservation efforts continue the legacy of those buried. Since we're gathered here in Georgetown for the Landmark series, I want to begin by situating this story right where we are. Founded in 1751, Georgetown predates Washington, D.C., and developed as a major tobacco port. Its economy was built on enslaved labor and contributions of a growing free Black population, laying the groundwork for churches, schools, burial grounds, and other institutions. By the early 1800s, free people of color were already forming their own institutions, asserting their presence in the city, yet segregation persisted, even in death. Black Washingtonians created their own cemeteries as an act of survival, dignity, and defiance. In 1808, the Montgomery Street Methodist Episcopal Church, now known as Dumbarton United Methodist, still around the corner here, purchased land for its integrated congregation's burial ground. Both white and Black, enslaved and free, were buried here. But in 1816, 125 Black members left to form what was called the Little Ark, later known as Mount Zion United Methodist Church, in protest of discrimination. The Little Ark was actually located very closely to the cemetery. The cemeteries are located, we right now are on 31st and Q. The cemeteries are on 27th and Q. And the church in 1816, the Little Ark, was actually located about 300 feet from the cemetery and by what we now call Dumbarton House Museum. So very close. White families began disinterring their dead when Oak Hill Cemetery, which is adjacent to us, opened in 1849. By 1879, the white church leased the burial ground to Mount Zion. What began as integrated space became predominantly Black cemetery through persistence and stewardship. In 1842, a group of free Black women purchased the adjacent land for burials, free from white control. Their intentions were clear: to guarantee dignified rest for their community, rooted in self-determination and mutual aid. The Female Union Band Society supported not only burials for care, but also care for free Black and Native American women, offering a vital safety net in a society that excluded them. This makes it one of the few cemeteries in the United States established and maintained by Black women's benevolent society. Again, they were one space with two histories. And just to, oops, that's not what I want. This little button. So you can tell the old Methodist burying ground and the Mount Zion Cemetery are here. And this is our imaginary line that goes all the way down. And at one point, it went all the way down to Rock Creek to the water. The Female Union Band Society. And this right here is Lyons Mill Road, even though it says street. This, if you go on newspapers.com and look around for Lyons Mill Road, you will find that there was a lot of drama on that road historically in the 18th and 19th century. However, in 2025, the District of Columbia and the Park Service have taken it off their maps. So they have not maintained it. And what people call is a trail, and we try to make it a trail, is really, you're risking your life at this point, trying to go down here. But this is the park. This is Rock Creek. So it's a great shortcut from 27th Street. And then there you are right there on the multi-use trail. So we're trying to work with the city and the Park Service to let's get this together. And this right here is Oak Hill. So we're all together. In the 1890s, a newspaper article described what they called queer customs at the cemetery. Bottles, shells, toys left at the grave sites. These were misunderstood, but deeply rooted African diasporic practices. Such rituals were acts of cultural resilience, linking memory, mourning, and the belief systems that white observers failed to understand, but which endured as sacred expressions of Black spirituality. These customs come into even sharper focus when we look at one gravesite that continues to draw acts of remembrance to this day. These articles are so interesting. Before I go on, I'll just tell you a little more about what some of them said, some of the things that were said in this article. This article was published all over the United States, in at least 14 different states and at least one different country internationally. And this is 1890 and 1894. So at first they just focused on baby graves, and we have a lot of children in the cemetery. So there were high chairs and baby toys and dolls and bottles, all kinds of ornaments on babies' graves. But then there are also things on adult graves. There was a man who was a coachman. And so his wife sold his horse and bought a hobby horse, a wooden horse, and had it coming out of the grave. There were hats, people who wore beautiful hats at church. Their favorite hat was on there. They put medicine bottles. They put spoons, shells, things that reminded them of those who passed away. They interview the sexton in this article, and he talks about a woman who they put a fan on her grave because she was going to need it where she was going. Okay. The reporter asked the sexton, "Hey, do you get mad when you go back and things aren't there anymore?" And he said, "No, spirits only take what they need." And so the tokens left at Nanny's grave echo a broader truth. These cemeteries are full of stories that continue to speak to. Oh, I didn't talk about Nanny's grave first. One of the cemetery's most beloved graves belongs to a young girl named Nanny, who was born in 1848 and died a week before her 8th birthday in 1856. Her site is often adorned with toys, cards left by those who visit today, symbols of remembrance, community care, and ancestral continuity. For at least 30 years, these offerings have become part of a living tradition of honoring her short but meaningful life. In 2023, her headstone was desecrated by fire on Juneteenth. This was a painful reminder of how Black memory remains contested. Yet the offerings returned, affirming our collective refusal to forget. The tokens left at Nanny's grave echo a broader truth. These cemeteries are full of stories that continue to speak to us. Let's turn to one such story, that of the Pope family. To understand the range of Black resistance across generations through education, legal advocacy, family building, and cultural leadership. I want to share a few powerful examples, and we will begin with the Pope family. Since we're here at Tudor Place, it's important to acknowledge Barbara Cole, who was born in 1809 and died in 1892, also known as Barbara Cole Williams, was born and enslaved here. She spent more than half her life at this estate, raising generations of Peter family children. Her daughter, Anna Cole Pope, here we go, was also enslaved. Yes. Hannah Cole Pope was also enslaved here at Tudor Place and sold in 1845 to Congressman John Carter, whose home was nearby. At Carter's property, she married Alfred. He also enslaved. Together, they were manumitted by Carter's will in 1851. Alfred Pope had already resisted slavery. He participated in the Pearl Affair, the largest nonviolent escape attempt by enslaved people in the United States. In 1848, he joined 76 other men, women, and children on a schooner, a ship called the Pearl, hoping to sail to freedom in the North. While the mission was ultimately intercepted and most of the people were then sold down south, Alfred was spared sail and returned to Carter's household. After his emancipation, Alfred became a respected businessman, a trustee of DC colored schools, a trustee of the Mount Zion Church, and a leader in Black Georgetown. Their daughter, Alice, passed away early. She was born in 1854 and passed away in 1875. She was a school teacher, and the family talks about Alice not liking to wear winter protective gear, and they think that that is what made her sick, and she passed away as she was only 20 years old. The daughter, their other daughter, not buried in the cemetery. These two are not buried in the cemetery. They're all buried. Those three are buried at Harmony. Well, we don't know if they made it to the new location. Columbia Harmony Cemetery is located underneath the Rhode Island Metro Station. And apparently in the 60s, they removed the people to Maryland to a new cemetery. However, we're real clear that most people didn't make it. Moving on from this story, let's talk about Barbara. The daughter, Barbara Ellen Pope, named after her grandmother, carried this legacy forward. In 1906, she refused to move to the segregated car of a Virginia train and was arrested. With support from the Niagara Movement, the precursor to the NAACP, she sued the railroad and won a landmark legal reversal. Her case laid groundwork for future legal challenges to Jim Crow laws. Yet her story was nearly erased from public history. The others interned in the cemetery from the Pope family include Jedida Pope, who was Alfred's mother, Jedida Pope Thompson, which was their oldest child. She was married and when she passed away. So she was Jedida Pope Thompson, and then Alfred Jr., one of their sons, who died as an early adult. Their descendants taught at colleges, worked as civil rights advocates, and passed down a legacy of community service, education, and resistance that helped define Black Georgetown. And this is their home. This is one of the most photographed homes in Georgetown. It's on 29th and O Street. And it sits on the land that Alfred Pope owned, like all of O Street and 29th. He sold the land that the church sits on today. And this was his house, which is at the corner. Let's now turn to another family whose legacy shaped Washington's Black educational and cultural institutions, the Fleets. James Jr. Fleet is buried in the cemetery. He was born in 1850 and died in 1881. His obituary described him as quiet, respectful, and devoted to his faith and community. But his story is just one part of the Fleet legacy. His father, James H. Fleet Sr., was a church leader at Mount Zion and a pioneering educator. In the 1830s, he opened one of the earliest schools for for Black children in the district. He appeared in the Mount Zion Church Ledger in both 1830, in the 1830s, and I believe in the 1840s. And was among the few Black students in the 1820s admitted to Georgetown Lancastrian School. He later studied medicine at Columbian College, now called George Washington University. Although he completed his coursework, he was denied a medical license because he refused to emigrate to Liberia, a condition required by the American Colonization Society, which sponsored his education. Music was central to the Fleet Sr.'s life and legacy. He fostered Black cultural life in Georgetown by teaching and performing. His children carried that legacy forward, reflected in their names: Mozart, Bellini, and Mendelssohn. These names honoring classical composers reflect a deliberate embrace of music as both education and cultural pride at this time when access to arts was often denied by African Americans. The Fleets are an example of early Black Georgetown families who were literate, property holding, civically engaged, and embedded in religious and educational life despite the restrictions of their time. Their legacy continues through their descendants, including Belle DaCosta Green, the influential personal librarian of J.P. Morgan and the director of the Morgan Library. Green, who passed as white to navigate elite cultural spaces, was James H. Fleet Sr.'s granddaughter, linking one of the cemetery's foundational families to broader American cultural history. The Fleet family showed us what could be built by those who gain access to literacy, leadership, and legacy. And this is Belle DaCosta Green. Her mother was Genevieve Fleet. Genevieve Fleet was born and raised here in Georgetown and attended Oberlin College. And then she married the first Black man to graduate from Harvard, Richard Greener. Once they got divorced, and they moved to New Jersey, New York area, where Genevieve worked at Princeton, and then she taught music. And Belle got interested in work of archiving, which was even more interesting because her father, which she was estranged from, that's kind of what he did. And she just got really good. And they just closed a year-long exhibit on her in New York at the Morgan Library literally 2 weeks ago. It's fabulous. I learned so much, but I'm encouraged that I hope that we do an extended version of that so we can talk about the Fleet family here in Georgetown, because that's what made her who she is. Now we turn to a different but equally powerful story, that of Gracie Duckett, who endured 70 years of enslavement. Her life reminds us of those whose resistance was survival itself. Gracie Duckett. She was born around 1791 in Prince George's County. She was enslaved, and later she was enslaved by the Whitall and the Rittenhouse household at Dumbarton House, just blocks from where we are gathered today. Gracie appears in the 1836 and 1848 Mount Zion Church Ledger. There she is. Reflecting both her physical presence and spiritual commitment to this community. I thought it fascinating to find her name on so many of these church ledgers because she was enslaved at the time. And she went to church on, what day is this one? This is Friday. She went Friday night. She went Sunday. She went at least 3 times. She shows up a lot. And so I'm glad they gave her that permission to go to church. Where we at? Gracie appears in the ledger. She had at least 2 children, Henry and Julia. Julia married into the Cartwright family, one of Georgetown's most prominent Black families. Gracie was manumitted in 1862, just 2 weeks before the district's Compensated Emancipation Act. Her enslaver had passed away and freed her in her will. After more than 70 years in bondage, she spent her final decades living with Julia on P Street, who had already been free for many years. Gracie is buried in the Female Union Band Society Cemetery, and her marker still exists. Her story, documented through church records, emancipation documents, and the Dumbarton House Museum research, reveals the enduring power of a Black woman's labor, faith, and familial devotion in this neighborhood. While Gracie Duckett's story speaks to endurance under bondage, we move to William Custis Costin's life, who illustrates the fragile and contested nature of freedom and the fight to defend it in every turn. So this is William Custis Costin. He is Black. I know he doesn't look it, right? I know. There's a lot of people I've showed you so far that you might not have thought, but they were and were treated as such. So let's take a moment to reflect on a rare and powerful statement made on the floor of Congress in 1842 after attending William Custis Costin's funeral. John Quincy Adams, former U.S. president and now congressman, delivered these words. The late William Costin, though he was not white, was a much respected as any man in the district, and large concourse of citizens that attended his remains to the grave, as well white as Black, was evidence of the manner in which he was estimated by citizens of Washington. Now, why should such a man as that be excluded from the elective franchise when you admit the vilest individuals of the white race to exercise it? William Custis Costin was a free man of color, born in the late 18th century. He worked as a bank porter for the Bank of Washington, where he earned widespread respect for his intelligence and trustworthiness. In articles, it talked about how he oversaw millions, not millions converted in today's money, millions in 1840. I don't know what that converts to today, but that sounds like a lot, a lot more. William Custin, like I said, was born free, we think, in Mount Vernon. But he married Philadelphia Judd. She might sound familiar because she was the sister of Oni Judd, where there are several books out. The enslaved woman who was famously escaped from George and Martha Washington. Both William and Philadelphia are buried in the cemetery. You should, if you haven't, they sell the book at the bookstore here at Tudor Place. It's called Never Been Caught. That is about Oni Judd, and it is one of the best books. And if you like Audible, it's on that too. It's a great book. Costin became one of the first African Americans in D.C. to publicly challenge the Black codes. When the city passed an ordinance requiring free Blacks to carry registration papers or face jail, Costin refused. He brought the case to court and won, securing the legal precedent that protected free Black residents from arbitrary arrest. His funeral drew white and Black mourners in large numbers. Adams' tribute wasn't just an eulogy, it was a political statement about who deserved the right to vote. Costin's life shows how African Americans in early Washington fought injustice, not only with protests, but with professionalism, courage, and the legal resistance. Well, Costin challenged injustice through courts. Others resisted slavery through quieter, more dangerous paths. These cemeteries themselves were part of this struggle. The burial holding vault, pictured here, I think this is in the 90s, this is today, is believed, or it's known actually, it's not just believed. Through our whole oral histories and consistent community memory, we know these vaults served as refuge for those escaping slavery. Hidden in the hillside in Rock Creek, a natural corridor northward, it offered both concealment and access to escape routes. These cemeteries were more than resting places. They were active sites of resistance and the legacy that didn't end with the Civil War. In the 20th century, protecting this land became another form of resistance, a legal and community battle to ensure it would not be erased. In 1964, heirs attempted to sell the land, the heirs to the Female Union Band Society, that is. A court initially approved, but descendants and other descendants and community activists fought back. Their efforts accumulated in 1975, when both cemeteries were listed on the National Register for Historic Places. I want to note that Neville Waters III is behind a couple people back here, but it was his dad, Neville Waters Jr., that helped save the cemeteries. Judge Oliver Gash ruled against the disinterment, stating, this is after it was made a national historic place registry. The court finds that this disinterment of the remains of those interred at the Mount Zion and the Female Union Band Society cemeteries would be a desecration of their memory and an offense to the moral and cultural sensitivities of the community. The legal ruling safeguarded the cemeteries from destruction and affirmed their historical and cultural importance. In 2018, the cemeteries were also recognized as UNESCO Site of Memory, associated with the roots of enslaved people, acknowledging their global significance in the history of slavery, resistance, and remembrance. This picture was taken in 1974 when they, after the judge ruled that we saved the cemetery, he also ruled that it be reseeded. And so what happened is you had volunteers, Police Athletic League. These people were from Duke Ellington High School. They came, they helped reseed it. They moved the markers. If you've ever been to the cemetery, you're like, why are the markers in these kind of piles? It's because they reseeded in 1975 and they moved the markers. And once they moved them, they realized they were too fragile to move back. And here they sat in these piles. Now they're not in piles, but they're still in these sections at the cemetery. But we hope to figure that out in the very near future. Speaking of which, preserving these cemeteries is about restoring memory, dignity, and community. Our current initiative includes photogrammetry, which I love. We actually have a program happening on May 23rd where we're bringing the whole entire McKinley Tech High School 11th grade. This is all teacher-led, which is even more exciting. So math, science, history, art, English. I think I got all the teachers of the whole 11th grade at McKinley Tech have set up different projects that they're doing that connect. Soil testing. I partner with ASOR. I don't know what it stands for at this very moment, but they're archaeologists, society, something, researchers. But they're going to teach the kids how to do photogrammetry. And so photogrammetry is when you see these and you're like, oh, a blank marker. No, they can take pictures. It's going to teach them with their iPhones. And then they're going to upload it into the software. And then we can read this. You see blank. And now you see Andrew Walker. So this is how we're going to hopefully find people. I forgot to add also that we predate death records by more than 65 years. So we've had to be very creative in trying to figure out who is in the cemetery. So at GW, there was a caretaker. He was a casket maker. That's what he was. First, he was a furniture maker, and then he turned casket maker. But he documented people 25 years before death records. And so we found over 2,000 people that are our people that were buried, and he was the casket maker. He's also associated with the Methodist Church, so that makes it a little easier to find out who he was and why he was doing it. So that helped us. So we're still on the search, but we're trying all kinds of creative ways to add people to this database. And right now we have over 4,000 names. Oh, I forgot to put so blackgeorgetown.info will get you to the database. And volunteers, if anybody just likes to research, that's something you could do for us. And so I'm really excited about teaching the kids this, though. We've done a workshop where it was free and for 3 days, and we taught people how to do this also that have other cemeteries around the country and locally. So I'm excited about that. So we have photogrammetry. We have a feasibility study that's coming along. Let's see. These efforts are not only to honor the past, they help grow the next generation of caretakers. Oh, I did put that on there. Why it matters. The Mount Zion and Female Union Band Society cemeteries are not just burial grounds. They are open-air archives of Black Washington. Here lie stories of enslavement, self-emancipation, community building, and resistance, love and loss. They remind us that African Americans in Georgetown did not wait for freedom. They claimed it, defended it, and built on it. From labor of enslaved women like Barbara Cole to the legacy of teachers, suffragists, and entrepreneurs among her descendants, these grounds hold the memory of people who refuse to be forgotten. Preserving these cemeteries is an act of historical justice. It is also a commitment to truth-telling, affirming that Black lives have always shaped this city and nation, and that their stories must be heard and honored. The wholeness of a people diminishes if the ancestors are not honored. I truly believe that. And I want to say thank you for spending time with me today. And I welcome questions and reflections. And please join me June 19th, from 10 a.m. to 2 at the cemeteries for our next community remembrance and service day. What's our address? 2501 Mill Road, Northwest. To volunteer or learn more, please visit our website at blackgeorgetown.com. And you can also follow us on Instagram at Black Georgetown. Thank you.
What was the Female Union Band Society?
So they were a mutual aid group. And so if you were free, if you were enslaved, you didn't have to worry about where you were going to be buried, because they were going to bury you where they wanted to. But as a free person, you had to figure that out. And so this mutual aid group, and there were a lot of mutual aid groups for people who became free. They had to set up their own systems. And so these women, you would pay $2 a week or $2 a month. And then if you lost your job and you needed help with your rent or health care or whatever it was, they were there to help you. This particular group also purchased land for a cemetery. I don't know that many women around the country that have done so. I've maybe have found one other cemetery that had a women's group, but not any others. They did not play instruments. So think of more about union banding together, that type of, yes. So there's Lyons Mill Road, and then there's Mill Road. Mill Road, and most people don't even know that road exists. It's really an extension of 27th Street and then hits a dead end. Actually, on our old maps, it's called Cemetery Road. So I'm not sure.
But the things that are left on the graves, do you collect them and save them for an exhibit, or you just leave them there until they deteriorate, or God forbid somebody takes them?
So the things that are left on the grave, we do not collect them. We do now. I have collected things I know that are very old and have put them aside because we find that people have taken them. So because we do find like old milk bottles and spoons, and but for the most part, we leave them there. And I try to feel like the sexton that was interviewed in that newspaper article, Henry Bowles, and that I don't feel attachment to it, and that it is just supposed to be. But I hope people would just leave them there. Any other questions? Yes.
Are you a descendant, or is there a descendant group?
I am working on my descendant group. I don't know if I'm a descendant. I have some of the names that the surnames in my family, and they come out of Virginia and they made it to Pennsylvania, and ironically, the research that I've done, my hometown keeps popping up, which was Lancaster, Pennsylvania. And so we know Lydia Hamilton Smith, who worked with Thaddeus Stevens. Thaddeus Stevens is buried. Most of my relatives are buried in the Thaddeus Stevens Cemetery at home in Lancaster. So there's some connections I haven't found yet. Yes.
I apologize, I missed the beginning, so you may have already said this, but how did you get involved in this work, and just like, what do you like about it? I follow you on Instagram, so I know you've been doing it for a while, but just,
Like how?
like, how has it sort of come to make you?
Yeah. Yes, I'm very passionate about the work, probably because of my background in working in civil rights. I'm a consultant. I started my life in the entertainment industry, oddly enough, and working with Discovery Channel, Capitol Records. And then all of a sudden I found myself working in social marketing. Social marketing is really about focusing on behavior change. So within the Black community, so stop smoking or financial literacy and all these different kinds of things. And I've always loved history. I have an MBA in marketing. And so when my friend Neville, sixth generation Black Georgetowner over here, asked for some help in marketing or communications for the UNESCO event, I got involved. Now, history is another thing that I love. So all this just brought all my passions together. I'm able to use like everything that I know. The only thing I don't really have a great background in is raising money. But I can get us in the New York Times and I can get us in the Post and all of that. So we're looking for that money guy or woman. So I got in, it just kind of happened. And then I'm here and the ancestors were like, you have to stay. So 2019 or 2018, really. In 2019, they named me the executive director.
You may have mentioned it, and maybe I didn't hear, but when was the last person buried, or are there still people being buried?
Nobody is definitely not being buried. Last person, 1950. Mm-hmm.
There's a stone back there that has a date in the 1990s or 2000s.
Yes, it does. So that is a couple in Georgetown that were volunteering at the church. And so the historian at that time, Carter Bowman, gave them permission. It's just the stone. No, nobody is there.
Is it truly 4,000 people?
Oh, it's way more than that. Just 4,000 names in my database. There's 8,000 to 10,000 bodies. Yeah, well, it's 3 acres. So the stuff that just looks like woods, that's also people there. They had terraces as well back in the day. And when I first got there in 2018, I could see headstones and now I can't see them. During COVID, we were told we had a workshop about how to fix the headstones, and we were told to follow the daffodils. And so we use a utility pole and hit the daffodils. We found over 100 markers. So I was like, wow, if we could go down the hill, we're probably going to be, and that was just on the side. And so we lifted a lot of them up. And so I'm just, I just can't imagine if we could do the whole place, maybe we could find so many more people. Yes.
What are some of the technologies that you're using to that you don't have the database?
Yes. So we're doing daffodils now. So newspaper.com, like real simple things that, like just last week I found out someone who's working for the casket maker was a Black man and he's buried in the cemetery, but he died in 1867. Way before death records, but I found him and it says he's buried there. So now I can add him to the database. And so, what was your original question?
What technology?
Oh, technology. That's right.
So you kind of more so into like creative solutions, or like physical, like
Ground penetrating. Yes. We've had all the flat surface so far, ground penetrating radar done, which is why we know there's about 8,000 to 10,000. We know that we've suffered from a lot of erosion. I can't believe I didn't have a slide in here about my problems, my challenges, because the city directed from Q Street all the water into the cemetery, which over, I guess maybe 90 years it's been, has created a lot of erosion. And so we know that less than 10 inches, you will hit somebody Yeah, it's really bad. And so then people leave their dogs in there loose without unattended. We have dogs digging, but that couple got barred. So if you see two dogs running, please call the police, 911. And so, that's, my fear is that, I'm gonna see a dog running around with a bone, literally. And so, but we know when we did the ground penetrating radar that people are buried 3 to 5 deep and are head to toe. We also, which makes these cemeteries distinct, is that they're laying in different ways. So one's going one way and the other. It's kind of distinction from the female Union band versus the Mount Zion side, head to toe. Yes.
People buried in Mount Zion were members of Mount Zion Church.
Not all. No. I thank you for saying that. On my other presentation, I have found the founders of Shiloh Baptist Church in there, at least 10 of them. And Shiloh had about 20 founders. So I found about 10 of them. They're in that shot, and they're not that close to us, but I'm not sure where their original church was. But Shiloh Baptist, First Baptist, Jerusalem, William Custis Costin went to Israel AME, which later becomes Metropolitan AME. Let's see. I found a whole bunch of Black churches. So they were not. The only people who aren't in there are Catholics. And the Female Union Band Society had Catholic members. It was Neville's Catholic grandmother who said to save the cemetery. Now, Neville's grandfather and that side of the family are members of Mount Zion. The other thing that's interesting, while I'm on this point, is that the same surnames that created or established Mount Zion, which is the first Black church in Washington, D.C. in 1816, are the same surnames that are in the cemetery, but also the same surnames that are part of the 272 and who established Epiphany Catholic Church in Georgetown. The surnames are all the same. You'll see Waters and Turner in all of Butlers, Queens, sci-fi. There's so many. They're Catholic and they're Protestant. And so the Catholics, Holy Trinity is writing a book. And so they've been sharing some of their information with us. And they found a document that said mixed marriages. And those mixed marriages were Black people who were married to Protestants. And so, and I thought, well, that's so crazy. But it was so interesting because they took it to death. Like on Sunday, I'm going to my church, you go to your church. And then when they died, his great grandfather, who was Methodist and married also a Catholic, he's buried with his parents. And he died in 1839. He was enslaved in 1856. And so but his wife is in the Catholic cemetery. So I thought that was so fascinating. Yes.
What can you share about Black Catholic cemeteries?
I don't know a lot about Black Catholic cemeteries, except that they stopped being buried at Holy Rood, I think, when they left Holy Trinity Church. So I thought I'll probably give you more questions than answers, but I thought it fascinating. So 1816, Black people leave this Methodist church and start their own, but they're married to Catholics. And the Black Catholics didn't leave Holy Trinity till 1925 or something. And you're like, wow, what took you so long? Like, you're married to these people that go to church and have their own thing. Like, I don't know. Yeah. Chainbridge Road. Yes, that's the third. So there are 4 historic Black cemeteries left in DC. 3 of them are in Georgetown. R2, and then the Union burial of Georgetown, which is on private land. Well, ours is private too, but there's a home there. And that home is of the descendants who care for it. And that is part of the Butler family. Yes. So they have about 1 acre, and most of their people are very similar in names. Definitely they're related to people in our cemetery. Same churches, community. Yes.
Do you know what the population in DC was around that time, like 1816? That's helped me contextualize the site that I work with. But
to get an idea of just how, like, when you think about the number of people that were here. Because again, we find all the names are very similar. It's like, there really weren't that many people here. And in terms of like how we think of the city being occupied today.
Well, we're Georgetown. So the city is a little different when we're talking about, depending what century we're talking about. So in Georgetown, I want to say, I don't know, anybody else from the historic sites have more of a, when I look at these numbers, I know by 1830 though, 2/3 of Black people here were free.
Yeah.
So, you know, it just got bigger and bigger and bigger. And, you know, the people that I mentioned were able to do a little more. Do we have any questions from online? No? Okay.
I have a population answer for you.
Oh, okay.
So in the total DC area, 1810, 24,000 people. The census lists free Black individuals at 2,549. For Georgetown, about 5,000 people and 551 were free Black individuals.
Mm-hmm. It changed. Right. It changes quickly though.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Anything else? Thank you guys for coming. And come visit us. Remember, Juneteenth or anytime. We're open. We don't have any gates. So there's also a QR code. If you want to just walk yourself, hit the QR code. I get some stuff. Not right now. I don't have any, but from the Arts Commission, we did our database. Yeah. Hopefully it will. We have a grant now from the National Trust for Historic Preservation that covers me right now. So, and we hope to get more. We have a donor, a Georgetown donor that is funding our feasibility study that we're getting done. So we'll know, bringing in all the civil engineers, environmental engineers, so we'll know what is possible. It's one of the things we want to do is repatriate some of the folks. I'm about to go down another path, so you might want to leave. But if you saw the article around the Smithsonian, maybe last year, they did a whole series on the brain collection at the and human remains that are there. Well, we found out we have at least two people whose brains are in the collection, and they did an expanded story on the descendants of one, and he happened to be a child, and it was taken. It was a doctor. He was working with a doctor at Children's Hospital. And it just seems so tragic because it's like they just weighed on this poor family's tragedy. I mean, the mother passed away, then the father committed suicide, then one of the other kids dies, and then and they take the child's brain, and he's buried in the cemetery without it. And so now we're trying to figure out how do we have some healing here? How about bring it back? We figure it out. And so this feasibility study will help us figure out if we can have something for repatriation. And then also, if any of you from Georgetown, you know about the Q Street bodies that keep popping up. And recently there is like some more that popped up. And I didn't realize it goes back to the early 1900s because it used to be a cemetery, a Presbyterian cemetery. And so those people, there was particularly, I think, is the Black section, they did not disinter the people. So most of the bodies that are coming up they're in caskets. They were buried like they were in a cemetery. Just don't want to like freak you out. Just all these people buried or something. No, they were, buried in cemetery with caskets. And so, but they're being held by the city since 1910 or something. And so it's time to, bring them home. That's a good question. I don't know. Why they help. I don't know why they bury them. I don't know why they didn't do that. That's a great question.
School work taking so long to get started and keep going and whatever. Is Howard involved with any of this at all?
Well, it's money, and that helps. Schools can do what schools do. And we've worked with, all of them, Howard, Georgetown, GW, UDC, pretty much all of the colleges have something. Even Maryland comes comes through, Hopkins comes down, and but what we need, like we've had all the things done, the GPR, the LIDAR, that shows, the erosion and, all of that. And so what schools can do now, I'm just really doing exercises with them, which is fine. But I need money. And my consistency also relies on money. So you have these historic cemeteries like mine. And the reason that, you can't keep up is because mostly volunteers, and volunteers can only be accountable but for so much. You need money, like the grass has to be cut. We are suffering from invasive knotweed, just like all of Rock Creek Park. However, if you look at Oak Hill, they don't have a single stalk. How did they do it? And so I want that. And they have 22 acres. And I'm like, I just wanted to get rid of it in 3 acres, help me. And so it's really about money. And that's why you have this type of thing. I mean, as a consultant, a lot of times what I was doing during this work is, when I don't have a grant, is that I'm consulting and I'm trying to make this work. And so when you have that, can't put, I can't watch the people who are leaving their dogs all the time. I can't, people setting fire to, 1856 little girls, 8 years old. Like, what is going on? Like, I can only do so much. And so if I'm not consistently being, supported in our resources, then it's really hard, for anybody. If I was Oak Hill, I have a house. The person who cares for the Oak Hill Cemetery has a house in Oak Hill in the cemetery. Somebody build me a house.
Would you like there to be, like, if money wasn't an object?
Okay.
But would you like there to be a fence around it and security? And what would be sort of the dream?
Well, the fence is like the least of my things. I want them 2 townhouses that face the cemetery. That's what I want. My problem with having McKinley Tech come, and they are only supposed to bring 120 kids, but then all 180 signed up to come. And, I cannot say no to kids wanting to come to a cemetery for a day. I was like, oh, we're coming. But we don't have any, they have to go to the bathroom, they have to eat. Right. So I got some portable potties. A lot of times, I'll ask Rob, but he's kind of far away to come all the way over here to Tudor Place. And then Dumbarton House, they're going through transition, but they also have been a great partner in the Colonial Dames, where we've, been able to use this space. And so, I mean, we've had some, the Ford Theater does a thing where we do some stuff with Oak Hill, in the sense, and Oak Hill is our friends. We know Oak Hill. We're like, hey, a tree fell down and hurt your thing. Well, they raised their own money, they were able to get 1.8 million for their fence.
So if somebody wants to make a donation, you would make it to blackgeorgetown.com /Black Cemeteries.
Well, there is actually a, if you go to blackgeorgetown.com, there is a donate button.
Okay.
Yes.
Specifically for you.
Yes.
For your work.
Oh, yes. That would be great. I'll take it. Anything else? Oh, we got to go. Look, Rob's like, cue it. Ooh.